Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Board of County Commissioners meeting. Today is Tuesday, November 15th, 2022. The time is approximately 9:30 in the morning. If you do have any electronic devices or anything that makes noise, please put them on quiet so that we can limit the distractions, interruptions. To do the invocation, I'd like to ask Pastor Andy Sealis of our church Together in Castleberry, led by, and after that, followed by Lee Constantine doing the Pledge of Allegiance. Can we all stand, please?
Let us pray. God, as we approach Thanksgiving, we realize that we have much to give thanks for. Lord, thank you for this county that we live in. Thank you for its natural beauty. Thank you for this place that we call home and for these relationships that we have here. Lord, thank you for a community that's made up of people who seek the betterment of all. Lord, thank you for these leaders and for all that you've given to them, the wisdom, the strength, the courage to move us forward. Lord, as we start this time together, we do so with grateful hearts. Lord, we pray especially for commissioners who are restarting their terms today, that you would bless them and encourage them and use them to strengthen this place we call home. We pray and we ask this in your name with great gratitude. Amen.
Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, Friday was Veterans Day, as you all know, and as we say this pledge, let's remember those that sacrificed their lives and sacrificed their time with their families and friends to ensure our safety and our freedom. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Commissioner. Before we move on to proclamation, awards, and presentation, I would like to acknowledge Mayor Megan Sladek from the City of Oviedo. Welcome, Mayor. We'll now move on to proclamations and award. The first proclamation will be presented by Commissioner Constantine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members, I would like to make a motion to approve this proclamation of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners recognizing United States Marine Corps Master Sergeant Michael J. Segura for his outstanding service to the United States and to Seminole County. Whereas the brave men and women of our Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, and Space Force demonstrate a resolute spirit and unmatched selflessness, reminding us that there are few things more American than giving of ourselves to make a difference in the lives of others. And whereas throughout our country's history, generations of service members have answered the call to leave their families, their jobs, and put their futures and even their lives on the line to valiantly defend our nation. And whereas for many service members, the sacrifice has ended in permanent injury or death, yet their spirit remains in the continued preservation of our freedoms and the promise of liberty. And whereas there are more than 30,000 living veterans in Seminole County who served our nation in times of peace and war, by their service they kept America strong. And whereas Master Sergeant Michael J. Segura enlisted in the United States Marine Corps in 1975. After completing his first tour, he joined the Army National Guard and the 105th Military Police Unit. Upon graduation, he transferred to the Headquarters Computer Operations Department, where he completed 20 years of military service and retired in 1996 at the rank of Master Sergeant. And whereas in 1996, he moved to Seminole County, where he has lived in the cities of Castleberry and Winter Springs. After a career with General Electric and Walt Disney World, Master Sergeant Michael J. Segura again retired to continue his service in the community, working with prison ministries and big brothers, big sisters. And whereas Master Sergeant Michael J. Segura is the current commandant and a life member of the Corporal Larry E. Smedley Marine Corps League Detachment in Orlando and is the district commander of 4 detachments. He is an active life member of the American Legion Post 243 in Oviedo, and he helps veterans in getting grants, financial aid, and other assistance where needed. And whereas Master Sergeant Michael J. Segura has brought great credit and distinction upon himself, the United States of America, the United States Marine Corps, the Army National Guard, and Seminole County. And now, therefore, be it proclaimed that we, the Board of County Commissioners of Seminole County, Florida, express our gratitude, admiration, and respect for Master Sergeant Michael J. Segura for his outstanding service to the United States Marine Corps and the residents of Seminole County. Be it further proclaimed that this proclamation is presented to Master Sergeant Michael J. Segura along with our sincere congratulations and recognition as Seminole County's Veteran of the Month.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Commissioner, would you present it, please?
Sir, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner.
We're going to sign this side, not all.
I would like my wife to be in the picture. I couldn't have done it without her. Would you come up? Thank you for that.
Thank you, Chairman.
Keeping me in good steed.
Would you do one more? Mayor, would you come down, please?
I would like to have you, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, did you pick that one? Thank you, Mayor, very much. I appreciate it. May I use my command voice or?
Whatever your pleasure, sir. I'm not going to argue with you.
Thank you.
If you'd like to come here, it'll pick you up on the...
Oh, so it makes it so good. Yes, I will, for sure. Thank you.
Marine Corps Master Sergeant, I don't want to mess with that.
I did write a few notes today as I am currently having chemo for the Camp Lejeune bladder cancer. I'll be having chemo today, but it's going well. I do want to say that. I'm honored to receive this award, very honored, actually. I want to thank the commissioners, the people who nominated me. I want to thank my wife and all the veterans who are here today, because without all their relationships, as the pastor said in the invocation, it's about relationships. So I'm proud to be an American by birth, but I'm a Marine veteran and Army Master Sergeant by choice. The Marine motto is Semper Fidelis. It means always faithful. And one of our ethoses are honor, courage, and commitment. We also improvise, adapt, and overcome through any situation. So when we take that into our civilian world after our service, we continue to do it that way, and we continue to want to impact the community, and we want to continue to help veterans. We learn as leaders in the military to lead from the front, and the best leaders are the ones who you'll see right there with the pitch shovel leading the way. And I've chosen to be that type of leader. It serves you well and it gets results. So I'd encourage everyone who are leaders to take that role. I thank you again, and I look forward to continuing serving the community and the veterans of Seminole County. I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now have a resolution that's going to be presented by Commissioner Zimbauer. Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, before I read this proclamation, I want to make sure that we fully recognize all of our men and women, our first responders, and our fire department. As you know, we're just following up on our second hurricane in a row. And many of these men and women have, put their lives on hold, their families on hold, to serve this community. So a big shout out to you all, and thank you all very much. It doesn't go without recognition, some of the things you've done, these high water rescues, airboat rescues, and so forth. So thank you all very much. It's with great pleasure I enter the resolution of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners recognizing the 30th anniversary of Seminole County Fire Department Special Hazards and Operations Team, also known as SHOT, in Seminole County, Florida. Whereas Seminole County's Fire Department Special Hazards and Operations Team, or SHOT, was formed November 4, 1992, and whereas SHOT combines the functions of Seminole County Fire Department's Hazardous Materials Response Team with heavy and technical rescue as well as water rescue. And whereas SHOT was founded by Seminole County Fire Department Chief Gary Kaiser, former Battalion Chief Chris Johnson, Lieutenant Robert Nakata, Lieutenant Malcolm Trigg, and the late Dick Criswell, with a total of 21 personnel, 7 per shift, stationed at SHOT's headquarters at Station 35. And whereas the specialized team handles all types of major emergencies, including hazardous materials response, gas leaks, heavy extradition, confined space rescue, collapsed trench rescue, high-angle emergencies, water rescue, air and light support, and fire suppression. And whereas today there are 56 members who operate out of 3 stations, Station 35 houses Squad 2, Engine 35, Dive 35, and Boat 35, as well as response trailers. Station 12 and 27 each house a satellite SHOT engine, and whereas SHOT has represented Seminole County by winning numerous international extrication competitions, and whereas the specialized team also helped found the International Hazmat Symposium here in Florida, which is also well known for hazmat training, competitions, and networking with other hazmat teams to learn best practices. And whereas Seminole County Fire Department is known as one of the premier all-hazard fire departments in the state of Florida because of the founding of SHOT 30 years ago, and its formation helped put Seminole County Fire Department on the map in terms of differentiating Seminole County from other departments. Now therefore be it resolved that the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners does hereby recognize SHOT's 30th anniversary. Be it further resolved by the Board of County Commissioners of Seminole County, Florida, this resolution be spread upon the official minutes of the Clerk of the Circuit Court in the County of Seminole, adopted this 15th day, November 2022.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Commissioner, would you present it, please?
Certainly. Thank you all.
Someone else.
Stand in the back.
you folks come over here, please?
Well, we can just.
I think I'll get it in the bag.
Light, I promise.
I'm a hugger. I remember that.
Good to know. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3.
We got a short video we're gonna play.
Let's take our seats first before we do these.
Wait till he says. And we do have a short video that we're gonna play.
heavy extrication, and so much more. That's what Seminole County Fire Department's Special Hazards and Operations team is all about.
What I call thinker calls, where it's not your typical call. You have to slow down and think about what you're actually doing.
The SHOT team was formed back in November of 1992. Retired Assistant Chief Chris Johnson, a founding member.
Everything was hand-me-down, and there was nothing new. And when somebody resigned, hopefully you were the same size because you'd get their gear.
Fast forward 30 years, and equipment is no longer in short supply.
We never had these.
That thing's nice.
Yeah, I bet.
With Station 35 the hub, home to several apparatus and necessary tools.
Have you seen the pins for these things?
That's impressive.
The investment into SHOT hand in hand with the hours and hours of training required.
He's training our new guys on the efficiency of flaring. He's actually going to turn the propane on, and we'll turn it on up here, and then we're going to throw the main liquid up and flare all the way off.
It takes all three parts. You got to have the equipment, you got to have the training, and you got to have that gung-ho spirit.
That gung-ho spirit is truly what has put Seminole County Fire Department and the SHOT team on the map. The best of the best, calling the shots.
Where's the other record?
I can remember as a new guy, passing by this special ops station and knowing that I wanted to do this one day.
The main reason I applied for Seminole County was for this team here.
It's a culmination of 30 years of some of the best people that's gone through the ranks here in Seminole County, and I think that's really what sets us apart.
High-angle emergencies.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. Matt Kinley, Fire Chief, Seminole County Fire Department. On behalf of the men and women of the Seminole County Fire Department, and specifically SHOT, thank you for the resolution. It says 30 years. It's really been a lot longer than that. It's interesting that some of the best things that happen in government are grassroots, and that's really where this started, was grassroots. You can see that Chief Johnson, Chief Kaiser, really making this team happen from that grassroots level. Chief Johnson was obviously heavily involved, and Chief Kaiser had that foresight and sometimes great leadership, is knowing when to get out of the way and just help where you can, and then the foresight of the board and county management to see the need in the community. I mean, the lives and property that have been saved because of this special team. And the SHOT team is really the fire department for the fire department. Firefighters are very highly trained, do a lot of amazing things, and this is just that extra level with those technical rescue, confined space, water rescue, hazmat. These guys and gals, they do a semester of chemistry in 2 weeks. That's one of the classes, and it's just amazing what they do every day. But again, thank you on behalf of the department for this resolution, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Chief, can you stay there for a minute, please? Chief Kaiser, would you want to say something? I want to recognize you, as well as Chief Johnson. 30 years ago, you not only started this group of specialized individuals to make sure that our county was safe, but your leadership was right behind it at all times. And I want to make sure that we're recognized, even though it says it in the resolution. I want to give you, either one of you, an opportunity if you'd like to say something to the board. Because it's uncommon to have people come back after 30 years. And I know, Chief Kaiser, we've seen you many times. You've been very faithful, not just to the department, but all of Seminole County. And I want to thank you, as well as Chief Johnson, for your leadership and your wisdom 30 years ago for helping us form this special group of people.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, 30 years ago, it's really kind of hard to believe that it happened that quickly, but I just want to mention that, mention the figure earlier of 56 people on the SHOT team, and that's the exact number of the entire staff of the fire department when we started in 1974.
Wow.
So they do great work. Thank you. It's a pleasure being here. And to you and all the previous boards, thanks for the money.
I'd like just to go out and play with all those neat toys they have.
I'll pass, but I'll pass.
I'd like to pass the thank you along to the citizens for the money.
Exactly. It was a great investment. Next on the agenda is the County Investment Advisory Report. We have a Zoom meeting with our advisor.
Talking about money.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, we do. We just can't see you
Okay,
right
I'm gonna-
now. Just give us a minute.
Yep. And I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen
All right,
as well.
Scott, you're on.
Okay. Well, good morning. I'm going to turn my camera off and share the screen. And just to verify, you guys can see that okay, correct?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, good morning. Another volatile day in the market, and I'll start with what events are driving it. Obviously, it's inflation, but unlike the last meeting, it seems to be moderating a little bit quicker than it has in a while. So we got a CPI report the other day that was up 7.7% on a year-over-year basis, which, make no mistake about it, is still very, very hot, but the market has sensed a turning point. There's a lot of underlying things. I'm not sure if the market is well aware of it, but supply chains seem to be normalizing pretty quickly. Port traffic, which is a big problem when the year began, has mitigated quite a bit. So what we're looking at is supply coming back. At the same time, demand is being reduced. So as expected, between the last meeting and now, the Fed did hike another 75 basis points in November. The big question is what they're going to do now in December. That's a mid-December meeting. A week ago, it was priced for another 75 basis points. As of today, it's priced for a 50 basis point increase. And the big question is how many more increases are in the queue, how many more are likely, and the market has pretty much sensed that tightening now is nearing an end. So quite a bit has happened in terms of a shift in market psychology, for lack of a better word. And all of this has to do with this very, very slight drop in the CPI index, which we got about a week ago. And in particular, the core rate, which is that red bar there, had been turning up and had turned down as of the October reading. And, I'll be completely honest with you, it was not that much of a blockbuster CPI report, but the market was really, really hungry for some good news and pretty much took it and ran. So I do think that we're going to continue to see a decrease in inflation, and I think the market is rubbing its hands together waiting for that to happen. So we're starting to see yields move downward. This is the overnight Fed funds target. This is going to mirror what you're earning, generally speaking, in the banks that are eager for money, as well as the pool. So you can see that for a long period of time it was near zero. as the economy started to normalize, the Fed back in 2015 started to stair-step rates up. Then the pandemic hit, and it plunged back down to zero. And since mid-March, we've had a very, very significant increase in the overnight target, and that's the Fed raising rates to slow the economy down. As I mentioned before, it would be a complete surprise if the Fed didn't do another 50 basis points in December, but that may be pretty close to the end. And there's now a thought that is prevailing in the market that because inflation is moving downward, or expected to move downward pretty quickly, the Fed will counterbalance what's expected to be a recession early next year with some rate cuts, probably in the second half. So we'll see. This very volatile market, thinking is very volatile, but at this point in time, that's the thinking of the market. So current rates, relative to the last time we met, the extreme short end is higher in terms of yields, but as you move out along the curve, we start to see yields move downward. Again, in expectation of rate cuts later this year. The pool rates stepped up quite a bit since the last time we met. That has everything to do with the Fed literally coming in and raising the overnight rate. And there are a couple of the Florida savings accounts that are very near 4%, which there's actually a pretty fair amount of money that the county has parked with the local banks still. So as opposed to the last 3 meetings where we had a very, very small reinvestment and then a couple of meetings where basically there was very little done waiting for the market to move higher, we're to the point where the market is higher and where it's going to make sense to step out. So you've got a number of maturities. The first maturity that happened, last week in Palm Term that came off at 27 basis points was reinvested back at 514. Then you have a number of upcoming maturities between now and the next meeting. And what we're suggesting is that they be reinvested. There's no need for this cash right away because you're moving into a period where your ad valorem revenue is going to be coming in. So what we're recommending, and this is a lot of recommendations, but they're tiered. So as these securities mature, on the 30th and the 1st and the 1st and the 2nd, we are recommending that they be reinvested back into the same security types that they were, and we're expecting a pretty significant increase in yield from where they were originally on. The next tier that doesn't have an arrow next to it, those are bond proceeds. So they came in early to mid-October. They were parked in the pool for the time being, and the arbitrage yield is about 460 on those, so we're actually able to come in at this point and invest those monies out. And in terms of immediate investments, we'd be looking at this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 investments that basically mirror the expected cash flows for the expected payments on the bond proceeds. So having these go out to match your cash flows, locking in rates against the idea that the Fed would be again cutting, basically coming very near the arbitrage yield, and taking care of the bond proceeds. The last two that are in red, we're sort of queuing those up for the early part of December when your tax monies start to come in. So these are recommendations that are really in several parts. And we're not suggesting that we come out in tomorrow and invest everything. The first part would be to invest the bond proceeds, and then the maturities as the maturities happen. And then when we get into early December and the tax monies start to come in, dip our toe in and start to invest some of that as well. And I will tell you that yields are moving around a frustrating amount today, yesterday. So these were yields that I looked at literally as of yesterday. If we were to do these trades today, these yields would not be here. They'd be slightly lower. They could be slightly higher tomorrow. But I do think that we're at the point where we need to take some of the liquidity that's been mounting, invest it out on the curve, and lock it in, especially the bond proceeds. So what I will be asking, and I should note here that because we didn't get the data to be able to construct, because it's very early in the month here, we didn't get the data necessary to be able to put the rest of the reports together, so you'll see those whenever the December meeting happens. I don't really have the ability to be able to show you without the data what your current portfolio is looking like. So with apologies and understanding that this meeting came early and it didn't allow us to do that. But what I'm going to be asking for here is a motion to implement these recommendations and recommend that the clerk implement your recommendations of the board.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Before we go to the motions, any questions from the board? Commissioner Herr?
Yes, I have a question on slide 2, just an insight question.
Okay.
So the CPI core, we're seeing a dip in October. It's the first time that we're seeing that, but we saw it happen in June, July. Is there anything, and then it went back up again, is there anything that's similar between this time frame and that time frame? Are there any insights there that we should have?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think the last time that I had a slide up here, I had a couple of arrows that showed head fakes, essentially, with the core rate. I will tell you that things are different at this point, or that at least they appear to be different for a number of different reasons. And the primary reason seems to be that used cars, let's take that as an example. Used car prices, used car and truck prices moved down quite a bit during the month of October. A lot of that had to do with large-scale production of new automobiles, which were really creating a lot of extra space in the used car arena. So, and that continues to be the case. We're continuing to see semiconductors come back. We're continuing to supply re-enter the market. Goods prices continue to fall. Service prices seem to have mitigated. Rents, although they're very sticky, a couple of months ago seem to have topped out. Owner's equivalent rent, which is basically a proxy for housing, has moved downward over the course of the last 4 or 5 months. So it's very broad this time instead of related to a few different items. And we're able to actually see, and we got a PPI report today, so the producer price index also shows some underlying weakness, as did the ISM report, which is a purchasing manager's report. So it seems to be much more broad in terms of the decline, but you're exactly right. We've seen several head fakes, and you could probably make a case that this is not, the market's reaction was overly dramatic, and I'm really grappling with that myself. But as we dig through and look at the data, it just appears to be much more broad than it was the last 2 times that it began to downturn.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Sure.
Any other questions from the board? Shane, do we have any written requests? Anyone in the audience that'd like to speak to the board on this issue? Anyone in the board? Anyone in the audience? Going to close public input. Public input's closed. Board direction.
Move approval of the recommendation.
Second.
A motion is second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much. You guys have a good Thanksgiving.
Thank you, too.
Next on the agenda is a litigation update by Brian Applegate as our interim county manager. Just an FYI, as we all know, that this is still some pending litigation, so I'm not trying to hinder discussion, but if we need to have additional information, please do it on a one-on-one basis. And Mr. Applegate?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Bryant Applegate, interim county manager. But for the moment, I'm kind of speaking in my previous role as county attorney. Today, I'm reporting on the next step in the restitution process pertaining to the Joel Greenberg matter. I'm here today as a result of, over the past few years, dozens upon dozens of meetings with Joel Greenberg's attorney, Fritz Scheller, our outside counsel, Ed Boxa, who's here from Foley and Lardner, the U.S. Attorney's Office, staff with the Tax Collector's Office, and J.R. Kroll is here today. I want to thank him as well for all the assistance your office has given me. And of course, with the county staff and each of you on an individual basis. Last December, I reported on a tentative initial restitution amount of $1,870,000 as it relates solely to Mr. Greenberg. It was just tentative, and I can tell you that in the vast majority of criminal matters, if there is any restitution, it's usually something like $100 a month forever. I'm happy to report today, though, that the county will receive $1,250,000 in the general fund in a wire transfer through Mr. Greenberg's attorney, Frisch Scheller. At a point in the next few weeks, the county will receive another $109,000 from the federal court registry. These two amounts total $1,359,000. And I want to emphasize here and now that this is only the first step in this latest process. Over the past few years, I've asked each of you for your understanding and patience because of the numerous federal investigations that were ongoing. And I want to thank you for your patience. And please be assured, I don't think I would be reporting this good news if you didn't follow that advice. I want to go over how applying this initial amount of $1,359,000, how it can be broken up. You may recall that an audit was conducted after Joel Greenberg resigned. The audit was done with the permission of the then acting tax collector. And again, as a reminder, you as the Board of County Commissioners, under Florida law, both statutory and case law, have no control over the budget of the tax collector's office, which is an independent constitutional office. The audit noted, among other things, the county sustained $98,000 in damages resulting from his blockchain efforts. There was $350,000, give or take, as a result of the improper use of county credit cards. And of course, the audit pointed out the infamous property flip that cost the county $262,000. Further, based on my review of the files, Joel Greenberg and the county incurred attorney fees related to the federal investigation in an amount approximately $470,000. We spent $70,000 on outside counsel bills from Foley and Lardner with the great assistance of, again, Ed Baxa, our outside counsel. So, the blockchain damage, attorney fees, the credit card misuse, and the property flip add up to approximately $1,260,000. I would like to set aside a remainder from the $1,359,000, approximately $100,000, for future attorney fees that will be necessary because of the following steps in seeking further restitution. And I'll take a moment to briefly discuss those. I had a conversation last week with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and based on that conversation, I've decided to turn over all our files related to the other individuals and entities to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. I'm requesting that it begin an investigation into the files to determine along with the State Attorney's Office if any of the files warrant criminal proceedings against any other individuals and entities. Additionally, county's outside counsel, Ed Baxa, and the law firm of Foley Lardner, in cooperation with the county attorney's office, will begin at the same time civil action seeking restitution against many other individuals and entities as possible. And as always, I'm asking that you not comment on this planned action, since there are and will continue to be active criminal investigations. Once specific action is taken in the civil proceedings, I can request, if necessary, pursuant to Florida law, closed sessions to provide updates and seek your guidance. I also want to note that none of what I'm talking about today has anything to do with the potential sentencing of Joel Greenberg. So it seems like yesterday that you sent Paul Chipok and myself to Tallahassee and after meeting with the Department of Revenue, were able to stop Greenberg from completing land transactions that would have cost the county millions of dollars. In my view, that effort kind of went unnoticed by many, but your confidence, your patience, and your persistence in all of this brings us today's good news. But again, I want to emphasize, it's only the start of the restitution process. Now, it's important to note that I'm not saying today that any particular individual or entity is criminally liable. Even after indictment, a person is not guilty until proven or pled otherwise. And I'm going to repeat that. It's important to note that I'm not saying today that any particular individual or entity is criminally liable. Even after indictment, a person is not guilty until proven or pled otherwise. So please, do not comment any further on this action. Of course, you can comment on your acceptance of the initial payment of $1,359,000. Before closing again, I want to thank our current tax collector, J.R. Kroll, and his office for all of his assistance over the past 2 years. I don't think we would have gotten to this point without his valuable assistance. To Ed Boxer, Foley Lardner, outside counsel, who's been instrumental in helping me, particularly in the last few months, button up what I'm talking about today. I also want to thank the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Middle District of Florida, and to Joel Greenberg's attorney, Fritz Scheller, and of course, members of the County Attorney's Office that picked up a lot of the workload while I was working on this issue. It has been a long road, and the journey's not over. When a release is signed, it will preserve the county's right with respect to other individuals and entities who may have wrongfully obtained funds from the county. We have all endured a lot over the past few years. Again, I want to thank you for your patience and understanding. So I would simply ask for you to approve, as you have in the past, my continued efforts in seeking restitution from all accountable parties, $100,000 set aside for additional attorney fees out of the $1,359,000 to continue this effort, the authority to sign the appropriate release, and of course to accept the $1,359,000. Thank you, and this concludes my statement.
Directions or comments from the board? Commissioner Lockhart?
I want to thank you and everyone that you've already noted, but prior to this current board sitting here, there were 2 other additional county commissioners who were very instrumental, and I want to thank Commissioner Horan and Commissioner Carey for their tenacity at the very beginning of this. Without their persistence and insistence, I don't know that we would be as far along as we are today.
Well said.
Commissioner?
So we're being asked to approve your signature on a release
That is correct.
that we've not seen.
That is correct.
I just wanted that on the record.
I will send you copies of it.
So from my perspective, that order of operation is backwards. And Brian and I have had this conversation, so I'm giving approval to sign something that we've not seen.
Mm-hmm. The release does not free up any other entity or individual that could possibly be involved in this.
Commissioner Zimbauer, you made a comment?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Commissioner Lockhart?
Mr. Applegate and I had a somewhat similar conversation, and I had a follow-up conversation with Mr. Baxa, assuring me that the release did not preclude us from further actions with other individuals. And I will take both of their words at this point in order to move forward, that is the case. I don't know if there is a legal reason that has not been made public, because once it comes to us, maybe it becomes public. That may be part of it. I'll leave that to you to explain. But I'm just grateful we're here.
Commissioner Constantine?
We've thanked everybody, and they are, that have been involved, commissioners, staff, Bryant, and I concur with all that. I also want to thank our current tax collector, because without his hard work and effort and working with us, we probably wouldn't have gotten all of this information that we needed as quickly. I'm comfortable. This is a unique circumstance. Somebody said, a commissioner said it was backwards. Sure, this whole thing is backwards. This whole, none of us wish we had been in this situation, and thank God we are now out of it for most part, especially with the people that are in office now. So I'm willing to make a motion to approve. I'm sorry. Did you guys? Oh, okay. I don't.
Commissioner Hurd, then Commissioner Zimbauer.
One final question, yes or no, and certainly if you can't answer it, I would appreciate that.
Commissioner Hurd, can we just we have a motion, is there a second for discussion?
Second.
Well, I'm going to perfect the motion in the best interest of the county attorney's office. I'll move a motion to accept the $1,359,000, set aside $100,000 for future fees, and authorize our now acting county manager / county attorney to have signatory capability for those settlements.
Okay. There's a motion. There's a second. Okay. Now, Commissioner Hurd, discussion.
Are we agreeing to a gag order? Are we agreeing to a gag order or anything that would prevent transparency with the citizens?
What we're agreeing to is not to comment on the contents of the release is a public record, so you'll see that. But I am not going to make comments as to the release in general.
I appreciate that.
Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing no one call the question, all in favor of the motion, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, pose like sign, motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Bryant, for all of your hard work with this.
Thank you.
Mr. Applegate, first of all, I want to say thank you and your team. Also want to thank the citizens for their patience. I know that you have to leave here today because your daughter is in delivery right now.
Yeah, she's...
Want to wish you well.
Good timing. I got the phone call about 2 hours ago that she's in labor, so...
Yeah.
But I will be back at 1:30.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're done with proclamations, awards, and presentations. We'll now move on to the consent agenda. Pursuant to Florida law, the public has the right to be heard on all propositions except for when the Board of County Commissioners are acting ministerially or emergency managers conducting the meetings exempt from Section 286.011 Florida statute. The public comment time on propositions would be 3 minutes for individuals, 6 minutes for groups. The right to be heard during quasi-judicial hearings is governed by Florida law. The public will be provided an opportunity to be heard on non-agenda items at the end of the meeting. I would also note that we also have in the audience today the CEO of the zoo, Richard Glover. I think that's for item 6, if anybody has any questions. And the chair of Main Street, Christine Hollaback, which is, I think, for item 7. I'd like to ask, is there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, one item has been removed from the agenda. Item 28 was pulled by the applicant.
Okay. Any comments from the board?
I'd like to pull item 8 for clarification and discussion.
Okay, 8. 28. What else? Anyone else?
22.
22. Is that it? Before we ask for a motion, Shaney, do you have any written requests?
We do on regular items, but not
Just on
on any
consent
given
agenda.
consent. No, sir.
Okay. I'd like to ask anyone in the audience who'd like to speak to anything that's on the consent agenda. I'm going to close public input on the consent agenda only. Public input's now closed. Is there a motion from the board? Commissioner Herr?
I'll move to approve items 5 through 24, including 25 and 26, and remove 8 and 22.
Second.
And 28, correct? You said? I heard 8.
28's not on the consent.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I would just ask if we could take off 26. I just had a few questions on that. That was not on the, I did not say that
Perfect.
because it was not on the consent.
Can we just remake the motion, Commissioner Herr?
I will be happy to. I move to approve 5 through 25 with removal of 8 and 22.
Got it. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. We'll now move on to item number 8.
Thank you. This was actually on our last agenda, and it was pulled by county staff for further clarification, and I had the opportunity to meet with both Donna Walsh and Allison Thal and Amy Pennock, who's the chairman of the school board, because this program certainly is targeted toward our teenagers who are in our Seminole County public school system. And part of my concern about this particular program is the amount of money that is allocated for in relation to the number of students who are participating. And while I understand that we had a little hiccup during the pandemic, and I will ask, Donna Walsh or Allison Thal to feel free to come forward to fill in some blanks if you'd like, but I think we left with an understanding that this program has a lot of great opportunity, and we would like to see it benefit more students for the cost that it takes to run it, and we'll be looking very closely at those outcomes. There is a quarterly report that's supposed to come to the board. We're going to stay in close contact, and the school board actually came to the table with some additional ideas about how they could provide more access to more students to hopefully make it a more robust, meaningful program. So I would just like county staff, if we could, to keep an eye on this item, because if we don't see the returns that we're hoping for, I'd like to see these funds be reallocated into something that could serve more students.
Okay. Is there a motion then?
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Motion to approve with the caveat as noted by Commissioner Lockhart? Okay. Second to agree?
Agreed.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Like sign. Motion passes. We'll now move on to item number 22.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 22, probably going to need some staff folks up here. I understand the change order, but I'd like to have an update and understand, have we been talking to the private property owners or the landowners through that jurisdiction? We've had discussion for the last several years about reaching out to them and them participating in a cost share program for these roadway improvements. So I'd like to know where we stand with that. Has that conversation begun, other than this commissioner having conversation with some of those property owners? That's probably Mr. Durr.
For the record, Rick Durr, Leisure Services Director. Specifically, this is I want to get to where your question is going.
Yes. So my question is, on these median improvements we're doing in the Riverbend area, and as we move that further down Lake Mary Boulevard and across 46, has discussion begun with the parcel owners who have shown an interest in participating in a cost share program for the maintenance of those areas?
For the maintenance?
Yes.
The short answer is no, since we're still under construction at this time.
Okay.
And it does not necessarily abut any of the work that is being done is in the middle of the roadway. So it's not necessarily attached to any particular land or adjacent landowner. It's right down the median.
Right. So if you recall, we had a discussion that as this area becomes developed, a lot of these landowners showed an interest in participating in a landscape that was same or similar to what the county would be doing, to have a sense of place coming into the county and through that whole corridor, and are willing to put in HOA documents a requirement that they be maintained, as well as help the county with certain costs. And I think that's a dialogue that if we don't have soon, we're going to lose that capability, and that ship's going to sail. And I'm happy to accommodate that.
That'd be fantastic. We'll be happy to do so.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Is the direction for 22?
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion, a second discussion. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Like sign. Motion passes. So I believe the original motion was up to 25, so we go to 26 now, which is the sheriff's. Direction from-
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I think all of us understand what this is. I see Lisa, Chief Spriggs in the audience. Maybe she might want to come up here just for a second. I might have a question or two, or maybe something that she might clarify. I also asked Tim earlier. This is normal, that they would have money to bring back, and then it is also normal for us to then, or they request that a lot of this is because we have purchase orders outstanding, et cetera, and that would that they need to complete with the dollars that they're asking for. With the new law that has been established there, and one in which I've had many discussions with the sheriff about, that it's maybe even more responsibility or more authority than he might have asked for. But once we budget to the sheriff, they are not obligated to keep the money within the line items that have been put in there, and they have the discretion and flexibility to move it around. And I know that hopefully our sheriff won't do that much, because we're talking about reoccurring to non-reoccurring, which could have drastic effects on our overall budget, since more than 50+% of our whole budget is in the sheriff's office. But in this case, we're giving back 2.1 million is for the replacement of the helicopter. Now, I was shocked yesterday, maybe it's just me, but I didn't know that a helicopter cost $5 million or something like that. I thought $2 million was the total price. I'm not buying any helicopter anytime soon. But it would be helpful, as a friendly request, that, when we have these back, that we have the line items that had not been expended. When you bring back the money, so when we give it back, we know what it would be for. So that's just a request. I felt like this was a good time to do it. I think you are giving us back $200,000 in this budget, but you're asking for the remainder to go right back into your budget to fulfill, like you said, excuse me, orders that you might have, and $2.1 million in the helicopter. So if you would, just for future, since you do the budget, I would appreciate it if you could do that for us when you're bringing the money back. Would that be possible?
Absolutely. We did try to summarize a chart in your agenda item of those carry forwards, and do know, Commissioner, all of that $4.6 million is committed and under contract, just things that were delayed or not received.
I'm sorry.
And so what we tried to do is just summarize it for you. There's a lot of little things in the little dollars, but like we showed you in the agenda item, predominantly we're talking about vehicle orders, and some of those have started to come in now, so we do have possession of some of those vehicles. Some of them are still outstanding. And the other larger one was, we talked to you about our Axon contract for body-worn cameras and in-car cameras. That was supposed to be implemented starting in August. It was delayed. It did start last week. Got a little bit delayed from the storm again, but is back in motion. So I appreciate that. The $2.1 million is in an effort to buy down the purchase of a helicopter, and I just do want to clarify one thing. The cost of the helicopter is around $6 million, so you had a little bit. However, the helicopter itself is a little over $3 million, so it's about $3.1 million. The outfitting of all of the equipment for law enforcement and what we're utilizing within the helicopter is the bulk of the cost. So I just wanted to clarify that, because if anybody's listening, they might go, you can get a helicopter cheaper than that. And then do know that the helicopters that we do purchase do rescue, Bambi bucket. So they're a little bit more robust than some versions you could buy.
I still won't be buying a stripped-down, helicopter anytime soon anyway. But yes, I know that, and this is only for information. This is this is not anything where I'm criticizing or anything else. I just thought that this was a right time with the new legislation that, we have transparency as complete as we possibly can. And I did know that it was going to the body cams and the vehicles. I understand the supply chain, everything else. I knew this is an extraordinary year. I just wanted to make sure that for future references, we go down the line, that would be just part and parcel of what we do.
We're more than willing, Commissioner, any of the commissioners, to send you a detailed list. I mean, it's kind of that balance of what do you put in an agenda item, but
Thank you
more
very
than
much.
willing to.
Thank you. And with that, I will move approval unless somebody else has a question.
Second.
A motion is second. Commissioner Lockhart?
Chief Spriggs, while you're there, I know there was discussion about do we buy or do we lease the helicopter? Did you make a determination on which was a better option for us?
We did not. We are still in the process. The determination of the funds that we'll have, now that we have the $2.1 million, that's going to be very helpful, will be on the sale of the current one. And we're in the process of discussions with some entities, so it'll largely depend on what we get for the current one.
Thank you.
But we do have a couple law enforcement agencies that are very, very interested. So we're hopeful that we're going to make out pretty good there.
Okay. Thank you.
Chief Spriggs, I know that the department is very mindful of the taxpayers' dollars and does a phenomenal job with that stewardship. Trading the helicopter in is nothing foreign to not just the county, but the Sheriff's Department. We've done it a number of times. And it's the right thing to do because there is still a lot of useful life on those helicopters until it has to go into the major overhaul, and that's where the value is. So I want to commend you all for doing that. You're actually spending the taxpayers' dollars very wisely for doing that to try to get the most return on the dollar to purchase a newer one with less maintenance on the horizon.
I appreciate that, Commissioner, and yes, that's another thing for the public, that we're in a 10-year replacement cycle, and for us, it does add value from a public dollar because of the usage of the helicopter. So it's not that the helicopter can't be used somewhere else. Like I said, there's some law enforcement agencies that are interested, but the usage, especially the one that seems very interested in ours, is for rescue. It's during certain parts of the year, so it's not as intensive use as what we're doing. So when we turn them at 10 years, we do have the warranty on the helicopter in full, which is very helpful from a maintenance side. And then we don't do that overhaul that is due at this point.
And that's one of the key things, because once you go to overhaul, then you got to rent one, and it makes it even more complicated. So I want to commend you all for doing that.
Right. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Zimbauer?
Just to point out that that cost is about $1 million for the overhaul and update.
Yes.
So it's 1/6 of the price of a new one.
Got it. Any other discussion? Call the question. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Thank you, Chief Spriggs. We'll now move on to the regular agenda item, which is the item number 27. Mr. Jex?
Morning. I'm Timothy Jex with Resource Management. Item 27 on your agenda is the final budget amendment for the fiscal year 2022 closeout. It's a BAR in the amount of $16.3 million. $13.5 million of that is for transfers within our ARPA grant fund. $2.4 million is for the closeout of the Castleberry Fire Fund. As per the merger agreement, it's being transferred into our county fire fund. $450,000 is for transfers within various grant funds to allow for closeouts related to prior period revenues and expenditures. That concludes my presentation. We're here to answer any questions.
Before we go to the board, is anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the board on this issue? Shane, you have any written requests? Anyone in the public? Closed public input. Public input's now closed. Board discussion. Commissioner Zimbauer?
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion is second. Discussion. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Thank you. Well, now, item number 28 was pulled, so we're going to move to item number 29, which is the Wekiva Island Winter Fest. At this time, we'll hear from staff.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mary Robinson with Development Services. Item 29 on your agenda is a request for an amendment to the Wekiva Island Special Event Permit. They're located at 1014 Miami Springs Drive. This event is scheduled for Sunday, December 3rd through Saturday, December 31st. The applicant has requested to expand the hours of operation from the approved hours of 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., Sunday through Thursdays, on December 4th through December 15th, and that excludes Friday and Saturdays, which they are permitted to be open until 11 p.m. The requested amendment to the approved permit would allow an additional 1 hour of operation during these dates for approximately a total of 10 days. The applicant did not submit any new information with the application to support the request for the expansion of the hours of operation. The staff is recommending that the Board of County Commissioners deny the amendment to the special event permit for the Wekiva Island Winter Wonderland Special Event Permit, as it's inconsistent with the board's original special event approval. And the applicant is present, and I'll answer any questions you may have.
Before we go to the applicant, anyone have any questions of staff? No. Okay, thank you. We'll now ask the applicant to come forward.
Chairman, Commissioners, thank you very much. My name is Bill Weinog. I live on Peace Valley Way in Seminole County. This is my wife, Mary. She's going to help me with some slides we want to put up on the Elmo. So, Mary, go ahead and throw that one up there. But before I start, I do want to mention and say I really want to thank staff. This past weekend, Wekiva Island closed for a fundraiser event for Keep Seminole Beautiful, and we were able to work with staff to work out some issues. You know, the folks of Florida have been greatly affected by a few hurricanes here recently. My heart, cries out for them. I feel horrible about what's happened to the folks of Florida. And Wekiva Island was in a very much lesser way affected. We were flooded by Hurricane Ian. We were closed for about 2.5 weeks. We were able to open back up. We replaced some sand and kind of cleaned up. And then voila comes Hurricane Nicole. And at the same time, this is when we were going to have this special fundraiser event for Keep Seminole Beautiful. We have grass parking. Some of it was underwater, most of it muddy mess, and we were able to reach out to staff and work with them and come up with some alternatives, and I do want to thank you all for allowing them to work with us and make that a great event for Keep Seminole Beautiful, so thank you very much for that. Okay, so now moving on to Wekiva's Winter Wonderland. I would like to throw up a couple of slides to kind of remind us what we're talking about. You're up. Yeah, just go ahead. No, I'm good. All right, thank you very much. So, during Wekiva Winter Wonderland, it happens during the month of December, every day, every night, we have snow flurries, which is kind of cool. So I wanted to share some of this so you guys, just to remind you what this event is all about. Next slide shows Santa Claus comes every day. Santa Claus comes by a water sleigh, which is kind of cool. And then that sleigh is available during the month for folks to go out on a sleigh ride. We decorate the pontoon boat as a sleigh ride, and families are able to go up and down the river on a sleigh ride. And then Santa does spend a little bit of time with the families there and the kids, which is precious and awesome. Next one, Mary. I told her I was going to go fast on this. Santa spends time with with the kids, and you can see Mrs. Claus is there. Kind of a cool thing we've recently added. Mrs. Claus actually tells Christmas stories to the kids, and they gather around in our classroom. Next slide. Of course, we have other folks that visit. We have stilt walkers, and we also have some folks from Whoville, and the Grinch comes. Now, this is probably one of our biggest events. Obviously, Breakfast with Santa is a pretty big event, but this is where we have pretty good attendance. And the last thing is part of our event permit that was approved. We're allowed to show Christmas movies 3 nights out of the week. That happens on Sundays evenings. Those Christmas movies are shown in a Christmas tree forest, so it's kind of cool. Families come and hang out. So what we're here to talk about is this guy right here. We have started this tradition where we have a pretty large Christmas tree, and it grows every year. This year, I think it's going to grow about 4 more feet to be about 24 foot tall. Next year, it'll be 4 more foot taller. So we're doing this so the families and the community can come out and enjoy the Christmas lights at Wekiva Island and enjoy Wekiva's Winter Wonderland. This is not a high-impact event. This is a very, very low-impact event. I have 5 sisters. My mom and dad used to take us out around the car in the evenings at Christmas, and we'd look at Christmas lights. That's what this extra hour is about. It is difficult to enjoy Christmas lights when it's light out. So we're asking to move from 8 o'clock during the weeknights, that's Sunday night till Thursday night, to 9 o'clock. It's a simple request because we want to afford the community the ability to see the beauty that we're putting into this property we have in Seminole County. So with that, that's it.
Okay. First of all, Mr. Weinog, thank you for your brief presentation. I didn't think it would be possible. I want to say thank you. Any questions from the board before we go to the public? Okay. Do we have any written requests?
We do. The first is Aaron Davis.
Aaron Davis?
Hello, Council. My name's Aaron Davis. I'm at 1051 Blake Street here in Altamont Springs. The reason I came down to speak to you all again in approval of giving them the extra hour, a lot of times I don't get home. I'm a single father of 2. I don't get home till 6:30 at night sometimes. By the time I've got my kids fed and dressed and ready to go and be able to make it over there, it could be close to 7:30 by the time I get there. So then it leaves us about a half an hour to enjoy the lights, to try to meander around and enjoy the amenities that they offer at the Wekiva Island. So giving us an extra hour obviously would have me give enough time for us to enjoy all of it, So that's it from me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Steve D. Moore.
Hello, councilors, or commissioners, I'm sorry. I am also in favor.
Can you give us your name and address?
I'm sorry, Steve Demore, 140 Wekiva Park Drive in Sanford. I am in support of this. While I live here in Sanford, I am also the property owner that is directly adjacent to Wekiva Island to their west. So I share a border with them. So I have kind of a unique perspective of probably being their closest neighbor to be able to reflect on how much impact that has on us, because we spend a lot of time out there with our family, just enjoying the river and activities and having campfires out there and things like that. For us, even their normal events really don't have much impact on us. I know there's a lot of discussion about sound and noise. We don't really feel like it's very loud. where we're at, and we're very close to where their events are, but especially during this Christmas season. And I believe in the past, this event usually has run till 9 in the past, if I remember correctly, in years that we've participated and gone out there with our children. But as their direct neighbor, this really would have no negative impact on us and would really give us an opportunity as a father of kids to be able to enjoy the whole experience of what they have there. Because, I mean, they always have, you know, a bonfire there for kids to roast marshmallows and all these different things that really are after dark type of activities. So having a little bit of time to actually experience that and enjoy that, I think would really be great to make this a more successful event for those who want to come and experience it. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Shani?
The last speaker is Lori Demore.
Hello, I'm Lori Demore. I live at 140 Wekiva Park Drive in Sanford, and am also a neighbor to Wekiva Island on the west side, and am in favor of extending this event until 9 p.m. It is, others have said, it's hard to round up the family and get there and enjoy the lights when it's dark, so having that extra hour would be awesome. Wekiva Island has a lot for the community, and I just think that it's a good idea and would give us the opportunity to enjoy it more. Thank you.
Thank you. Shani, was that the last written request?
That was the last written request.
Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to speak either for or against this? Please do so at this time. We're going to close public input. Public input's now closed. Comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman, could I have Mary come up for a minute, please?
Ms. Weinog?
No, I'm sorry. Forgive me, Mary Sue. Mary Robinson.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Sorry about that.
Just want to put it on the record right now. The current thing is already we are giving Sunday until 9 o'clock because of the movies. That was part of the motion.
That was after from the 19th forward, they're permitted to go to 9 o'clock.
What about the Sundays? I thought the Sundays, they can go until 9 o'clock right now. No, I thought Sundays, because of the movies.
Yes, that's
they could go
correct.
until 9
December
o'clock.
4, 11, and 18, 8 to 9.
That was part of the motion.
For the movies,
Yes,
that's right.
okay. So we're only talking about 8 days here. The 5th through the 8th, and the 12th through the 15th.
Yes, sir.
Normally on those days, they would be open until 7.
Correct.
We extended it an hour to 8. So I just wanted to set that. It was, because some people mentioned Sundays. Sundays, we had already given them till 9 for the movies as part of the previous motion. So my next question is, has anybody from the normal group that we have in the homeowners association, have you heard any feedback from them at all?
Just an email that's from Mr. Jeff Stamer that stated he was out of the country, but that he would have someone attend this hearing.
Okay. And I don't see anybody here.
I do not either.
Mr. Weinog, I think I'm going to ask you a question now, if you want to stand next to Mary. I think you know there's that.
Excuse me, Mary, can you allow Mr. Weinog to take the podium, please?
Sorry.
That's all right.
Thank you, Mary. I think you already know that there's that you and I share a common interest that it's a very close bond when it comes to the environment and everything. And I always thank you for that, because I know what you're trying to do at Wekiva Island. One of the things that we put in the development order that I think has been overlooked is the fact that we put in a mechanism so everything doesn't have to come to us, that you and the citizens of that neighborhood would actually work together and talk when there was disagreement. Have you gone to them about this change and asked them, talk to them and explained what you were trying to do and why you were trying to add the extra hour?
Can I ask my
Well, if you send him, you made a mistake, because, he's going to start a fight.
Well, I have not personally done that, but
Well, I think Mary Sue is the one. Mary Sue, are you not the designated person to work with them in the development order, or have you not been in the past?
No, I am, but nobody's contacted me, and we have not contacted them.
No, but I mean, I understand that they probably wouldn't contact you because you're the ones that instigated it. I would expect that you had contacted them. Have you done any of that? Okay. I'm not...
I can't see how the extra hour would be very impactful.
But Mary Sue, I understand that, and this keeps coming back over and over again. And all I'm saying is, look, I know what you're trying to do here, and I love what you're trying to do, and I know it's a great program, and I am inclined not to have a big problem with the 1 hour. All I'm trying to do, though, is trying to set up a mechanism that we spent hours and hours, as you know, literally trying to hash out to get you all and them to cooperate a little bit and communicate. Because when everything is solved up here, I can tell you that I am frustrated. I know my fellow commissioners are frustrated when this is coming up, and they come. Now, they're not here today. I understand that. But we did get something from Mr. Stamer, and I know that I've gotten others that have called me, et cetera, et cetera. They're always saying they always want a little bit more. They always want a little bit more. But I'm just trying to say, if we used the development order, what's in the development order, to communicate with them and be proactive, I think a lot of this could be alleviated. Now, maybe it wouldn't be, but I'd at least love to see if we would try that. That's all I'm saying. So I'm requesting that when you're doing this, that you guys contact them, be proactive, and work with them, because that is what is in the development order.
and I give you my word, we will do that from this day forward, and I apologize for missing that.
Commissioner Hurd?
Thank you, Bill.
Yes, so a couple of things. I also think what's in the development order is the ability to have events. And when we originally heard this, we were sort of circling around the notion that 9 o'clock was acceptable, and then there were subsequent conversations. So I would tell you that I'm in favor of this amendment. And I would also tell you, as a parent who's tried to herd kids into the car to try to get them somewhere during the holiday season so that we can fully enjoy it, that limiting factor of 8 p.m. on those weeknights, these kids are up until 9 o'clock anyway. So the notion that the neighbors' kids are all tucked in bed by 8 o'clock, I found that to be hard to believe. Maybe I'm not as good a parent as they are. But I don't think this is harmful to the neighborhood. I actually think it's helpful to the very children that we're trying to service in this community, to give them an opportunity to spend time with a family that's willing to put them in the car, pump them up with candy, let them see snow, and the Grinch. That's what makes life great.
To circumvent this, if I can, Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to make a motion, but I wanted to get it on the record that I really do. And you all, I mean, we've all said this at the meetings before. I just wanted to make sure that we put it on the record that as part of the development order, I'd like to do that. We did extend it to 8 o'clock. I think the real concern, just to be fair, was that all the amenities of Wekiva Island were going to be open until 9, which is usually 7, not just the Christmas tree. Everything else was going to be open too. And let's just, be fair about that. It wasn't just, kids going to look at the Christmas tree. But with that, I am willing to extend a request from you all, to extend an offer from you all that we do extend the hours for those 8 days, because that's all we're talking about, the 4 Monday through Thursday, the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, and the 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th, to 9 o'clock, with the caveat that Mr. or Mrs. Weinog, whichever, go and talk to those folks and just, try to get some sort of relationship. You know, I mean, I guarantee you I'm going to get 6 or 7 phone calls tomorrow getting mad at me because I changed, you know, my mind on this. But I am willing to give you the benefit of the doubt, but I'm begging you to please talk with those figures. With that, that's my motion.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Zimba and Commissioner Lockhart.
Obviously, I will be supporting this with my second to the motion, but let's just call this what it is. This entity has existed long before many of these homes were built, and that's where we find ourselves with the collision of two worlds. A non-conforming use that existed for decades, and quite frankly has been cleaned up. At one time, it was, as many of us know that have been here long-term, a very vile place, violent and drug dealing and so forth going on, and that's no longer the case. We move fast forward and development has happened in and around here, and now the folks that are living there don't like the fact that they now live next to a place that existed previously, and I get that. But that said, the Winogs have entered into a DO with regulations, and quite frankly, we keep bending that DO from the standpoint of changing what they're entitled to their special events. And I think as long as we continue to do that, we're going to continue to have this battle. So I know Commissioner Constantine has worked very closely with the Winogs and the residents in his district to try to find a path. And a path was found at one time, and then it fell apart. Then a path was found again and was eventually put into a development order. And I didn't hear it argued here, but it was argued at the last request. They're entitled to special events, and we have to make that decision. And a special event during the holidays that goes to 9 p.m., I find to be negligible at best for the purposes and what actually will be happening there. So I would just encourage us to, again, find a path once and for all so we don't have to revisit this each and every year 2 and 3 times and take the time of this council, the residents to come out, as well as the business owners. You know, we paid for a noise ordinance to be done. You know, that was always a situation. That will still have to be adhered to, as everybody knows. So my belief is, regardless of what you do, there's always going to be folks that aren't happy. And we are not here and unable to please 100% of the people. So I will support this, but we've got to put this to rest once and for all in my mind.
Thank you. Commissioner Lockhart? I'll come back to you later, promise.
Yeah. So I felt like where we landed last time was actually a pretty good compromise. Yes, they are entitled to special events, but it's this board's purview to put parameters on them for what the impact to the community would be. And while I really appreciate the presentation of the adorable children in the Christmas lights, we all know that Wekiva Island is its primary source of revenue is food and beverage, and their adult beverages. And so while that is lovely, we also know the side of Wekiva Island that has drunk, naked people walking down the street at closing. And you all got the emails of the pictures. Let's not act surprised. So and to be fair, the type of establishment that you have now, which I have taken my family to and have enjoyed the river, and I think you're doing a wonderful job. It is very different in its intensity now than what it was many years ago. And so I think it is going to be a constant dance of trying to have it be, I mean, you are on a pristine, we talk about protecting the Wekiva River Protection Area and the Wekiva River, and we talk about removing septic tanks, and we talk about all these things that we want to protect the Wekiva River for. But yet, for some reason, when it comes to this particular entity and special events, we're not worried about noise and light intrusion and the environment as much. So I'm a little perplexed by how we can flip that switch so easily. the food truck that you have out there is a permanently established restaurant. When I went to get food from it there, and I made a comment because my husband is very particular, and he wanted a certain type of mustard on his sandwich. And I said, you know, Tim, it's a food truck, let it go. Just you get the mustard you get. And the woman in the food truck was very offended that I referred to it as, this is not a food truck. We have, 60 items on our menu. We're a full-service restaurant. And I went, not according to your development order, you're not. So let's be honest about all of the areas where we're pushing the envelope in this DO. And I would just like to, I want to support the district commissioner and his willingness to be flexible, but I felt like we were in a really good place before, so.
Commissioner Constantine?
Yeah, and like I said, I tried to circumvent this, but I can't let it go. I mean, I was a senator when Bill brought this idea to me and came into my office and showed me, and you all have worked with Bill. You know how excited he gets about his things, and I love the idea, and I've said it time and time again. You know, part of the thing that I love about Wekiva Island is you have to see the river to want to save it. And so yes, there are certain conditions that I think it's fair, but Commissioner Zimbauer, I agree, I don't want to talk about, the auxiliary thing, but I agree with Commissioner Lockhart in that these are special events. And the special events have specific responsibilities for certain things that we approve and not approve. We already approved an additional hour. The fact of the matter is that I've lived here a long, long time, and quite frankly, I know it used to be a playhouse. I know it was a fish camp. I was not aware of all the drugs and everything. I'm sorry, I wasn't. But I do know that it did pre-exist, but the intensity of the existence prior to that was far different than it is today. And I am always willing to give the benefit of the doubt until I see that something, is inconsistent with what we have approved. And, again, I know what's going to happen tomorrow. I'm going to get 6, 7, 8 phone calls from people saying, how did you give them that? I respect the 1 hour a day. I do. I get it. It's not, it's not the end of the world, but we are going to continue to get this as Wekiva Island pushes the envelope and wants something different or whatever. So I just want to make sure. I would have not have approved those properties to be built there if it was done, if I was on the commission, because we all know it's pretty much in the wetlands, but it's there, it exists, they have rights, and, we did hammer out an agreement, and, each time that agreement is changed a little bit, we're going to have this discussion. And that's what we're doing right now. And I want to circumvent this. I am in support of the extra hour, but with the caveat that Mr. Weinog or Mrs. Weinog, whoever it is, goes there and really has a sincere discussion about how the two groups can work together. And with that, I move the motion.
Before we call the question, I'd like to just add, for me, when the board commissioned the sound study, basically was the issue for me. The sound study, from my interpretation and from what I've heard from the expert, they were well within the sound ordinance at that time of the study, and I believe this is a lesser impact than the event that they had when they did the sound study, so I don't see an issue with the additional hour. That's just my position on it. Any other comments before I call the question? I'd like to make a motion's already been made. Second, discussion. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
No.
4-1. Mr. Weiner, do you want to make a comment?
Thank you very much, and I don't know if it's appropriate now, but I would like to say regarding intensity increasing, the old Wekiva Marina's intensity was greater. So I don't know what you're saying if our intensity is less. And regarding the switch, there is no switch. I respect where I am at And I think Lee understands that, and I would invite you down there to understand we respect the animals and we respect the environment.
I've been there. I've enjoyed it. The switch I was talking about flipping is ours, not yours.
Okay, but I want to let you know, there is a huge passion on our side to do the right thing. That is why we are there. And we are no longer a non-conforming use. We spent a lot of effort to make this a conforming use. We changed our land use and our zoning to recreation for the community. And the county commission at the time said, Bill, you have to understand, you will never be able to change this back. So it was a gift I gave to the community, that property, in essence. We have created an environmental center that is paid by some other mechanism that you brought up. And that mechanism is really canoes. The livery is really where we make most of our money. And it does include adult beverages, which some folks enjoy. So anyway, I do appreciate it. I wanted to make sure you understood that. And
Mr. Weinog, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take your ball and go home.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next item, item number 30. You want a break?
5 minutes.
Take a 5-minute break.
This is going to be this next one, I think.
Take a 5-minute break. Come back to the dais, please. If we can have board members come back to the dais.
It's fun. I love it.
I'll go at 8.
I did, in order to stay around past 9.
If we can all take our seats, please. Thank you, Oscar. Okay, we're going to resume the meeting on item number 30. Ms. Rebecca?
Good morning. For the record, Rebecca Hammack, Development Services Director. We are presenting the evaluation and appraisal report this morning, which is supported by the visioning report. So I'm going to start with a brief presentation, and then I will hand it over to Eliza with Canaan to do a more thorough review of the visioning process. So as you're aware, Florida statutes does require that all jurisdictions evaluate their comprehensive plan every 7 years and determine whether it needs to be amended to reflect changes in state statute, as well as reflect any changes needed based on changes in local conditions. Once that's done, that's when we produce the evaluation and appraisal report and then submit the letter to the state land planning agency. So we are required to notify the state by letter of the determination if Seminole County does wish to make changes to the comprehensive plan. So, and as you know, our evaluation and appraisal report is due December 1st, 2022, so that's why we're here today, so we can get that in on time. So we are required to reflect any changes to Florida statutes that have been done between 2016 and 2022. And then also, we are proposing potential amendments based on the visioning plan, which Eliza will go through in more detail. And then we also corresponded and discussed with each of the departments and had them review the pertinent elements of the comprehensive plan. And they also sent us a list of policies that they would like to look at in the year-based amendment process. So we are proposing amendments to the transportation element, drainage element, future land use element, conservation, potable water, sanitary sewer, recreation and open space, and intergovernmental coordination. So we brought this forward also to the Planning and Zoning Commission, which is also our local planning agency. They did recommend transmittal to the state of the evaluation and appraisal report. So the next steps are to transmit the letter of determination with the matrix, which lists the elements that we would like to amend through the year-based amendment process. So once we do transmit it to the state, the next step is that we have 1 year to actually do the amendments to the comprehensive plan, which are called the year-based amendments. So any questions for me? And then if not, I'll hand it over to Eliza.
Commissioner Zimbauer.
Thank you, Rebecca. A couple questions. As I read through this, and maybe I'm the only one, but it seems to me that these are actually two separate items. Why they came together as one, as the Visioning 2045 and the years. What's your thought process behind that?
Sure. So we did the visioning plan in order to inform the evaluation and appraisal report. So it came out of the strategic plan, or the key strategic priorities from the Board of County Commissioners that the board had wanted to engage the citizens through visioning, and then based on that visioning, we would say, okay, based on the vision of the citizens and of the county, this is how we need to amend the comprehensive plan.
And I know there's no real meat and potatoes as it comes to workforce housing or economic development. Is that something you gave any consideration to in the Visioning 2045?
So affordable housing was a lower priority within the visioning, or the vision of the community. However, we do already have things within the comprehensive plan. And again, that's something we can look at. This report doesn't specifically propose any language related to the goals, objectives, and policies. It's just saying this is what we're going to look at in order to implement local changes and the statutes.
And my final question is, are there any projects currently in the pipeline that any of these are being, any of these applicants are being required to adhere to before they've been adopted?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Any other questions from staff? Okay, thank you.
Good, barely still morning, everyone. Thank you for having us. Just getting the slide set up here. But we are at the end of about a 10-month process here. I've been in front of you for much longer than that, primarily related to the Land Development Code. I've been in front of you many times related to that, but a few times related to the Envision Seminole 2045. So why are we doing this? As Rebecca mentioned, it was your idea. This is one of the most important, you recognized as a board that one of the most important things that local government does is guide growth and development. And so engaging the community in that conversation was a priority of this board. And it was nicely aligned with, as Rebecca mentioned, the evaluation and appraisal process, which is due to the state on December 1st. And this level of engagement of the public is not required for an EAR, but it is something that you thought was important. So as I said, we're at the finish line here. We've had a number of large public engagement efforts. The listening tour and visioning tour were both tours around the county to talk to residents. Then we came back to you and the BCC Vision Workshop in June. We had a community-wide vision conference incorporating multiple departments as well as community members in August, and then a final vision plan review tour where we shared the concepts that I'll be talking about today with the public. And then we are here at the end of that process at the Vision and Ear adoption with you today. We had 300 in-person participants and about 2,600 participants online. The vast majority of those were Seminole County residents, but we also had people participating who work in the county, do business in the county, people who go to school in the county, so some of those folks as well. So our job as land use professionals is to combine what the public desires with some of the information we have about the current conditions of the county as well as what we expect happening in the future. So looking at growth and development, what we've seen in the past is about 105,000 new residents moved to Seminole County from 2000 to 2020. The estimate going forward for the next a little bit more than 20 years is a little bit lower than that. So it's 90,000 new residents, and that's inclusive of the cities. We expect that a little less than half of those residents would move into the unincorporated area, totaling around 16,000 new dwelling units. So that's some of the context in which we had these conversations with the public. The outcome of the GII study, which was frankly kind of a surprise to a lot of the professionals, is that the existing future land use map and framework essentially accommodates that growth. What do we mean by the existing framework? We mean restrictions on development in the East Rural area, as well as restrictions on development in the Wekiva and Econ River protection areas. It also includes encouraging development in certain areas, such as redevelopment and infill along centers and corridors. So one of the questions in the plan is, how can we do that better? So with that, with all these conversations with the public, we came away with 5 key vision goals. They are protect wildlife, maintain rural places, grow walkable, get active, and be green. One thing that was really interesting as part of this process is we're really about, it's to some extent visioning is a storytelling process, is how do we tell the story of why we do things the way we do or why we should do so in the future. And in Seminole County, it really is a combination of what the county is already doing, because in fact it is living its values in many respects, and how do we make sure those values are still what the community cares about today, and how do we continue to live out those values in the future. So I'm going to go briefly through each of these vision goals. There's a lot more detail in the vision report, and there's even a lot more detail in the slides I'm not going to go into. But I wanted to make sure that that was available for people going through the agenda packet. So in terms of protecting wildlife, a big strategy is, of course, protecting the land that they live on. The state legislature, with their approval of the Florida Wildlife Corridor, has created a great vehicle for the county to partner in doing that and potentially access funds. But there are also other ways, such as protecting the water quality by controlling what goes to our rivers, and that's already come up a couple times in your agenda today. Multiple strategies that the county's already doing on that, as well as strategies the county can explore about how to do that better. And then different ways of protecting wildlife more within the urban areas. So that is everything from, the county actually already has a lot of dark sky policies in the standards, but there's nothing in the comp plan about it, and there's nothing that explicitly says why the county is doing that. So that's one of the recommendations in the EAR, is to be more explicit about the why and how it connects to the county's values. And then using the county's land to build up some of the things we're encouraging citizens to do. So we encourage citizens to plant wildflowers in their yards. Are we doing that comprehensively on the land the county controls? Particularly right-of-ways is one of the biggest pieces of land the county controls. And these are things that overwhelmingly got positive. I'm not going to show all the survey results, those are in your packet, but I did want to highlight a couple areas where the public had really strong support of these issues. There was strong support for preserving and acquiring natural lands of high ecological value. There was also very strong support for these strategies to protect wildlife. Moving on to maintaining rural places. Now, the first piece of that is very much something the county's already been doing, which is establishing the East Rural area and restrictions on what kind of development can happen in the East Rural area. Primarily, the areas that are undeveloped are restricted to very low densities of 1 unit per 10 acres, 1 unit per 5 acres. Now, there are areas in the county that allow development under the existing framework, so we're not making any recommendations to change the existing framework, but for instance, this is an example of an area that is already zoned for commercial development but is vacant within the East Rural area, so we looked at how that might develop within the character of the East Rural area. And this is the view from the roadway and the view from inside that, you know, what that might look like within the character of a rural place. And trying to encourage the idea that there's certainly lots of open space in the rural area, but are there gathering spaces? Are there places where the community can come together, more like community parks? Other strategies we looked at aren't necessarily limited to the East Rural area. So for instance, looking at how we can extend design guidelines. The county's already been looking at non-residential design guidelines for buildings, but also looking at signage guidelines that might extend not just to non-residential, but also to entry features for residential areas. Now, there's probably not, that doesn't need to be limited to just the designated rural area, but could also be a good transition between the rural area and new development that's happening within the urban service area, but at the edge of the rural area. So we hear a lot about the desire from the community to have transitions between the rural area and the rest of the county. And one way we can manage that transition, besides density, is to look at design and the design of the signals that people see as they're going through. We also have talked before in this chamber about preserving rural enclaves, so I won't go into that, but there's details about what the criteria might be and how we identify those. And lastly, to have successful rural places means having successful rural businesses. We know a lot of what that might look like, but we can also look for synergistic opportunities, such as we want to see more native plants within the county on private properties and public properties. One of the challenges there is there's not always enough plant material available, so encouraging something like native plant nurseries as a rural use could serve two goals, both keeping those rural places in agricultural production and supplying native plants for those areas. So vision goal number 3, growing walkable communities. To be transparent here, there was a lot of concern about development from the public. But what we did hear is if development was going to happen, people were enthusiastic about a couple things. They wanted to see redevelopment, and they wanted to see multimodal transportation embedded in those communities. So what do those mixed-use walkable places look like? We've talked about that a lot in here because it's in this chamber, because it also dovetails with some of the work we're already doing on the Land Development Code and the Mixed-Use Corridor District. Multimodal transportation, again, a big chunk of the plan was actually recognizing the good work the county is already doing and tying that all together into one story. So the 2040 Master Transportation Plan is already identifying the importance of multimodal transportation and the economic function of transportation, because transportation has to serve another purpose other than just moving people around. And that is even in the process of a further update for 2045. Now, one gap that we identified is the county has had these strategies to encourage redevelopment and infill along corridors for almost a decade now. The question is, why hasn't that happened in some of these areas that the policy seems to be trying to support? So one of the important elements that went into the EAR was recommendations around rethinking those policies for centers and corridors and for mixed-use development to make sure they're really meeting where the market is at in terms of development that wants to happen, and that they are, that there's coordination with things like infrastructure investments that could support that development. So again, strong support for investing in infrastructure and planning to support redevelopment, as well as safe, walkable, bikeable, transitable communities. And again, we did some renderings of what this might look like. This is what a walkable redevelopment might look like from the outside, because we know people will be driving by it. And then what it might look like from the inside. This is a bigger redevelopment opportunity, again, from the outside, and what that might look like from the inside of that walkable community. There was a question from Commissioner Zembauer about housing. We didn't deal a lot with subsidized housing, but we did deal with housing in a couple respects. One is this item, which is missing middle housing, the importance of ensuring there's a variety of housing types that are permitted by the comprehensive plan in appropriate areas, as well as enough volume of housing that is supported within the redevelopment areas. Vision Plan Goal number 4, supporting active lifestyles. And this is where we'll start to see some overlap here because, for instance, walkable, bikeable development also can dovetail, for instance, walkable, bikeable development also can dovetail, some of the investments that support that can also dovetail with healthy, active lifestyles. So this is where the Master Trails Plan comes in. We know that the county for some time has been really serious about investment in the trail system. Largely that has been focused on recreation. Increasingly, the focus regionally, as well as in Seminole County's 2021 Master Trails Plan, is about dovetailing that recreational opportunity with the transportation opportunity. And we loved highlighting that the Master Trails Plan is already doing a great job of highlighting that. The next step is just to implement it. Other things that came up in the public input were desire around access to water bodies, as well as expanding other types of recreation opportunities, including neighborhood parks close to home. As we start to think about the county as having not just these larger recreation opportunities that are servicing people countywide, but also making sure that people who live in the unincorporated areas have recreation opportunities close to home. And finally, Vision Plan Goal 5, Be Green. And this is, again, where we'll see some overlap. Obviously, there are things involved with sustainability that also support and protect wildlife. Tree planting in public right-of-ways is, again, a great opportunity for the county to support both the multiple positive impacts of that, from shade for people walking and biking to habitats for birds and pollinators. And we see different types of investments that support this, from county tree planting programs to free tree for resident type programs. Sustainable landscapes and streetscapes. This, again, goes between those benefits to wildlife, like supporting pollinators and birds, to other types of plantings that may support lower water usage or lower fertilization usage. And finally, managing water responsibly. The county is engaged in a major effort is kicking off this major effort around a holistic water policy that will dig much more deeply into that than we did, but we touched upon it, as well as other ongoing work in the county, including multiple basin studies that are addressing stormwater and flooding. And lastly, just kind of the other sort of green building practices that might be that are opportunities, including solar and electric vehicles. We saw it was important to reevaluate the existing incentive programs, and this goes, again, across to the affordable housing issue as well, as part of the comprehensive plan update that would result from this year and vision. We think it's important to look at those incentive programs and see how they're performing. are they incentivizing what they're intended to incentivize? Are they actually producing programs in the quantities that would be expected? And if they're not, how do we tweak those incentive programs to perform better? So that is the conclusion of my discussion on this. I'd be happy to hand it back to the chairman.
Questions from the board? Commissioner Zimbauer?
I'd like to go back where you're talking about transitioning along the rural boundary. And help me understand what your I understand transition, but there's no area on the urban side for transition on the boundary as it exists today. I mean, it's built, Oviedo and Winter Springs are built right up to the rural boundary, so unless you're going to transition, or I guess what I'm saying, I want to make sure you're not advocating transitioning on the rural side.
No, sir. So the intention there, and I mean, this is a high-level vision plan, and this is also not necessarily limited to the east rural area. It could also apply to areas on the west side, but the idea is to identify within the areas within the county's control where there's a sense of an existing rural character, but we know that they are transitioning to urban uses. So how can we maintain some of that rural character through design, even as the density goes up? And absolutely not within the east rural area. The design guidelines could be applicable within the east rural area, but not any changes to density.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments? Commissioner Lockhart?
Just a follow-up question, and Liza, you might not be able to answer this, it might be Rebecca, but when we talk about rural enclaves, because then when we look at the western side of the county, or even areas in the urban core, if you will, we do have some rural type communities still with dirt roads and agricultural type hobby, I'll call them hobby farmers maybe. And we had given direction for there to be some work on those areas and maybe do a pilot of some sort, at least for one of the rural enclave areas. Can you just kind of give us an update on where we are with that? And is that folding into this? How is this working?
Again, for the record, Rebecca Hammock, Development Services Director. So we have identified areas that we think would be appropriate for rural enclaves. So the idea was, as part of the year-based amendments, we would bring those forward to the board, because if we were to designate those as rural enclaves, it could be either creating an overlay through the comprehensive plan or actually changing the future land use map designation for those properties. So that's something we would be discussing as part of the year-based amendments.
And that's give me a little time frame. Are we talking?
So we have to do that within the next year. Once we transmit this letter, we have a year to adopt the year-based amendment. So we've included the rural enclave as one of the areas that we're looking to change. So it's part of the evaluation and appraisal report.
Okay, I guess I was just trying to marry Commissioner Zembauer's point of transition, and if we're not transitioning in the eastern area on the rural side, but we're looking for potential transition areas on the western side. The western side of the county is pretty urban.
Right. So I think what Eliza was referencing was more about aesthetics and the way something looks. It's like as you're driving out of the urban area and into the rural area, maybe those urban developments on the border would have a more rural feel rather than a suburban feel, like maybe through signage and that type of thing. But it's not. And it was just a suggestion. It doesn't mean and when we come back with actual language for the goals, objectives, and policies, if it's something that you're not comfortable with, we can, certainly not do this.
Okay, thank you for the further explanation.
Sorry.
If it's okay, I would like to clarify a little bit more information on Commissioner Zembauer's earlier question about the missing middle housing. So Eliza actually reminded me in one of her slides, because we are doing a lot of updates to the land development code related to missing middle and affordable housing, and we're actually doing concurrent updates to the comprehensive plan, which will be done before these year-based amendments. So when we bring the land development code updates back to you, we'll have concurrent amendments to the comprehensive plan, and that will implement those, or help allow us to implement those changes.
Awesome.
So, all right,
Commissioner Zimbauer?
A follow-up again on the same inquiry, and I wonder how this is going to work and how you're going to identify rural outside the rural boundary. There's an area in my district along Thomas Stable Road, which historically has been 4 to 10 acre tracts. People have horses. People maybe don't have horses anymore, but used to have horses. And slowly, some of those property owners have sold off in tracts and combined, and now there are homeowners associations where there used to be these 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 acre tracts. And future land use is either medium or low density residential. But yet maybe there are 4 or 5 property owners still living that lifestyle, at least for now. And perhaps their plan is 5 years from now, 10 years from now, to sell their property for the highest and best use. How are we going to put this policy in place, if at all, for a scenario like that? I mean, arguably, they're living a rural lifestyle, but they're really not rural. I mean, they're surrounded by urban. So I need to understand how we're going to do that, and then secondary to that, before we change future land use on somebody's property, you're going to be notifying those affected owners, and we're going to have this whole discussion with those property owners before we just change their future land use.
Yeah, correct.
Because I think you're going to be surprised what some of those landowners are going to have to say about all that.
Correct. So
I
we've
agree.
identified areas that we think may be appropriate for rural enclaves, but we would have to do community meetings. We would have to see how much support from the property owners there is in order to do that. And we would have to have further discussion with the Board of County Commissioners to see if that's something we want to move forward with. And
Sure.
we would need to hear from the property owners and the public. I mean, there's a way to do it with an overlay, and then I know Eliza's spoken to this very point, that it may be appropriate to have the rural enclave now, but 20 years from now, it may not be appropriate. So however we, however we write the language, we would need to take that into account.
So my follow-up to that would be, if this board were to give you direction to move forward in that regard, all things being equal, what do you believe a timeline is to fully identify those areas, have a community meeting or several, write the code, do all this, get it implemented, transmitted to the state?
We are required to do it within the year.
Well, I understand that, if you're going to adopt that aspect, but if we
Correct.
decide to do it next year,
Right.
you can do it next year as well.
True. I mean, we don't necessarily have to adopt the change.
And this
So if
doesn't
it's
have to be hit for this deadline.
Correct. I mean, if we ultimately decide that we are not going to have amendments related to rural enclaves, we would just notify the state that that's something that is not being adopted as part of the year-based amendments, and we could do it in future cycles.
I can't imagine we can pull off between now and December, or whatever the date is, to have all those kind of meetings for those property owners and have that whole discussion.
It's possible.
Oh, boy. Whew. Okay,
Commissioner Hur?
thank you.
Commissioner Hur?
I do think a good piece of this is actually in my district, where they are absolutely not living in your rural, before I get screamed at in the 3-minute notice, in the 3-minute speeches. You're rural when you get right to your street, but you're not rural in anything that leads up to it. And the challenges that we have with those areas are significant, and I do agree that the ability to seek input is really important, because the feedback is mixed. We know the folks that come here most often, but there is a very quiet crowd out there that is making phone calls as well. They just don't come in this room. And so it is a very difficult conversation that we have to have. I would also ask, for purposes of this presentation, I'm going to ask a favor. The question that I wrote down on these slides, so when you start on 18, 19, et cetera, is exactly what Commissioner Zimbauer mentioned. I asked, why do we need community parks in the rural area? Thinking you were talking about the rural boundary. So before we have public hair on fire, could we clarify these slides? Because these slides would be very useful for us to use for community conversations. They're so well done. But in Seminole County, when you use the word rural, you immediately go to rural boundary, and 2 out of the 5 of us at least did that in the presentation. So that would be extremely helpful and it's a favor.
So this clarification may or may not help, but when you're talking about these slides, this is an unnamed property in the East Rural area. So I don't know if that helps or hurts. It is reflective of what is currently allowed in the rural area, because the rural area, we are not making any recommendations to increase what is allowed in the rural area, but the comprehensive plan, as it stands today, does not put the rural area in amber. It limits what can happen there.
That does help, and...
No, and to your point, I mean, there are people that in a rural area, notwithstanding what we often hear in these chambers, that wouldn't desire a community center for their daughters to do ballet and their children
would or
to...
wouldn't?
Would. And other senior centers to engage and do what many of us will be doing in 10, 15, 20 years, playing bingo and checkers, but...
I was thinking martinis in the afternoon and mimosas in the morning, but that's...
And just to be clear on what this shows a store. This is a store, and this is a park next to that store. So community gathering places in terms of outdoor, not indoor.
Sure.
And private, yeah.
Commissioner Constantine.
I just wanted to compliment you. I think this is, obviously, these goals are not only reflective of what I believe that the vast majority of the citizens of Seminole County would like to see happening now and in the future, but it sets the standard and goals for us to try to obtain. The challenge, clearly, is going to have to put the policy language that meets the goals that we're trying to obtain. And the one thing I don't want to leave without not only complimenting, but also pointing out that it was just a really nugget that you put in there, and that is the why. We need to, it's almost like you want a preamble, of everything as to the why we're doing this. And that not only helps us, it not only helps the citizens, but it would help the staff as they're trying to figure out how to do these things on the day-to-day basis. So that why is extremely important, and I just wanted to compliment you for throwing that out and putting that into the whole thing.
Okay, thank you. This time we'll go to the public. Shani? If you have any written requests, please give them to Shani.
So far, I just have one request. It's Alexander Hockaday.
When you come to the podium, please give us your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Alexander Hockaday. I live at 2838 Sun Lake Loop in Lake Mary, and I am in full support of this plan. I believe that it has the potential to turn Seminole County into one of the leading counties in the state in terms of economic viability, because many of my peers, including myself, struggle with getting around, right? So I don't have the most reliable car. Obviously, when it works, it's great. When it doesn't work, not so great. But I do try to commute mostly by bike, and in the current state of the county, that is not always possible. And this plan here gives many, many new opportunities, including the Master Trails Plan, to improve transportation throughout the county. And this is critical because, as we can see, gas prices keep going up, car prices keep going up. It's getting more expensive to get around. And one of the key ways to reduce the cost of that and to, have more money to spend on other things throughout the county, including shopping, restaurants, et cetera, can be found by saving money on gas and cars and biking, walking around. So you see many of these walkable community plans like this that are set up so that people can spend money in their own communities. And by doing so, they will effectively increase tax revenue. So good for the board, good for the county, and good for the community too, because it creates jobs, right? So when more people are going to restaurants, more people are going shopping, that creates jobs for us to work at and to make money and to basically just live. And I think it's critical that we adopt this plan, and especially the transportation aspect of it, because it is very important to not only myself, but many of my peers, especially younger people who struggle to get around because they don't have a car, or they can't afford a car, or they have to live so far away because they can't afford to live within the urban core of Seminole County that they have to drive, you know, from Volusia County just to work here. And I think it's really important that we, as a county, focus on that transportation aspect and continue to increase opportunities for local transit, like the bus system, for example. Definitely needs a little bit of improvement, not the most reliable system at the moment, but it works. And the same thing with the trails, right? They've been there for 20 years now, longer than that at this point, and they're starting to fall apart in many places. You see people riding on the road next to the trail because it's so bad quality, right? So I think it's really critical that the county takes these roads and these bike paths and really improves them through the planning that's done through this plan, all the hard work that our planners have put into this. And yeah, that's basically it, that we should focus on transportation. And yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Lockhart?
Yeah, I have a question for you, if you don't mind.
Of course.
You said you live in Lake Mary.
Yes.
How long have you lived here in Seminole County?
So I've lived in Seminole County for the majority of my life. I was technically born in Orlando, but I grew up in Longwood, spent a few years in Germany, and then came back here to Lake Mary, and called it home since 2018 now.
And what do you do now?
Currently, I am a student at Seminole State, and I work at Panera Bread.
Go State, Go Far. Would you mind leaving your contact information with Shaney so that we can get a hold of you? I think I might have found one of my new advisory board members.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to.
And if you would also let us know where you've seen our trails in disrepair, that would be very helpful.
Basically, the entire Reinhardt Trail.
All right, thank you so much. We'll be reaching out.
Thank you. Commissioner Zimbauer?
That's the question I had, was where was the disparaging portions of the trail? As that was taking place, I saw Mr. Durr in the back of the room cringing as to, wait a minute, I take pretty good care of my trails. But maybe there's some new development there. I know in my district in Winter Springs, there were some issues some time back in one of the bridges, but I think that's been remedied. And so that was my question. So thank you. Thank you very much for coming. I mean, I think this highlights and really puts the spotlight on the decisions we make today are going to affect the next couple generations. What we desire and what we may want to happen and what some in our community want to happen is far different than what some of the younger population desire, want, and are entitled to be members of our community. And that's why we have to pay attention to this affordability issue and consider our actions today, how that may impact them 20 years from now, 30 years from now. So I sincerely appreciate you being here today and sharing your thoughts. Thank you.
Shaney, next.
Joe Humphreys.
While Joe's coming up, I just want to say, but he said exactly what everybody else is saying. So isn't that nice that he agrees with, you know, everything that we're trying to do? That's right.
Good morning, Commissioners. Joe Humphreys, 883 Cardinal Point Cove, Sanford, Florida. I would here speaking on behalf of my HOA, so I would like 6 minutes. In speaking to this, I think this is probably as critical an issue that this board has considered, will continue to consider for the foreseeable future. I've met Alex at some of the meetings. He is a very sharp guy. He's got some really great ideas. The interesting thing is, for an old guy and a young guy, we're pretty much on the same page. I commend staff and Canaan for the work that they've done on this. And it's interesting, it's kind of reflective of what we've heard from Polk County, Brevard County, Alachua County, Indian River County, Collier County, which I know very well. They've all made an effort to do just this, protect the environment. It's statewide. We're hearing it everywhere. I've had conversations with incoming congressmen, incoming state representatives about this very issue. When you look around this room, you look at our history, you see the senator. Florida's natural choice has been that way probably since the Civil War. Yes, we talk about what's rural, what's not rural. I go back to the history of this county. At one point, I was told by a commissioner, I think you're asking me to rewrite history. No, I'm asking you to learn from history. This county is committed and has brought people here for development purposes, to make their homes, to build their businesses because of Florida's natural choice. Yeah, what is rural, what is not rural? Go back to the agreement of 1999. It states specifically what rural is. Where I live in the Warpa, it's rural, and that word is used over and over and over again. Now, we can argue the semantics, but the statement is just that. Look at the conservation easements that have been established that haven't been enforced. So we want to talk about a transition area. Yes, the Warpa is indeed a transition area. This department, the natural resources, is underfunded, understaffed, and yet we cling to it as one of the things that we promote as a county. Right now, today, the Bear Preserve, which is about 24% of our total natural lands in the county, is underwater. Probably will be underwater, according to my conversations with Mr. Doobie, until at least Christmas. I've met people out there that wanted to come there, were disappointed that they couldn't go there because it's underwater. How many bears are in the Bear Preserve right now? 0. Because bears aren't amphibians. They like to swim, they eat fish, but not in a bear preserve. They're in people's neighbors, in their neighbors' yards. We were trying to protect a mom and a cub running across Longwood Markham last night, trying to get across the road, and yes, the traffic was so bad they couldn't. My neighbors were fearful that they were going to die last night. So I was getting phone calls in the middle of the night, please, can you do something to stop this? The parks, I've talked to people from one end of this county to the other, and everything that has come out of this study is exactly what I've heard, Democrats, Republicans, independents alike. And they all say the same thing. What are we doing? The buck stops right here. Why we're having the debate about rural versus not rural is because some of your former commissioners didn't live up to what the county codes, the comp plan said that we were going to do. So you have a decision to make. Will you support this? Will you give natural lands the staffing that they need in order to make this truly Florida's natural choice? I urge you to do that, because I can tell you for a fact that most of the people that I've talked to, again, up into including last night, don't feel that this county is living up to its mandate. And I urge you to indeed take this very, very good study that's very reflective of this county and actually administer it. Because I don't think that we've done a very good job over the last several years, and I'm not the only one that feels that way. And I'm sure you get some of those phone calls too. So I urge you to, again, going back to the standards of conduct for the Seminole County Commissioners, commissioners will always remember that their first and greatest concern must be the safety and welfare of citizens and the staff, but you represent the people of this county. And this county, I think, has spoken. Not everybody wants to live in the woods. That's fine. They shouldn't move here. The rural part of, or the urban part of the county, obviously, is just that. We have lots of opportunities for housing. I've had conversations with people. I'm actually having ongoing conversations about tiny homes for veterans. We have veterans on the street. I have a number of veterans groups that I'm talking to that want to do some things along those lines that can preserve the natural lands of this community and provide reasonable housing that's affordable housing for people just like that, first responders. So there are ways to solve these problems, but we all have to work together, and you have to, again, let's live up to the commitment that this county supposedly made a number of years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Humphrey. Commissioner Zimbauer.
Mr. Humphreys, if you'd be kind enough to send the names or contact information of those veterans that are in need of help, we have some assets we can assist them with. I'd appreciate that very much.
Yeah, I'm working on that now.
Ms. Beach?
No more speakers.
No other written requests? Is there anyone else in the audience that'd like to speak to the board on this issue? We have no more written requests. Going to close public input. Public input's now closed. Board discussion? Direction? Is there a motion to move forward?
Motion to approve the, I'm sorry? No. Motion to approve the item as presented by our staff and consultant.
Second.
The motion is second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Okay, we'll now move on to county manager report. We have our deputy county manager, Tricia Johnson. Trish?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman and Commissioners, I have 2 items for you today. Firstly, I'd like to seek board approval to approve a waiver for certain fees for repair and reconstruction of commercial and residential structures that sustained damage directly related to Hurricane Ian and Tropical Storm Nicole. Essentially, based on Hurricane Ian damage alone, we have about 414 structures that are marked as having minor damage, 116 that have major damage, 1 that is destroyed, and about 230 that are inaccessible either due to flooding or we couldn't access the neighborhood because it was gated. We would require applicants to demonstrate that the permit is storm-related, which would be verified by staff using a few different methods. By the permit type would indicate the damage, the location of the property in the county, and whether it's located in a flood area or an area that experienced damage as a result of the storms. We can cross-reference damage assessment software, ARM 360 for damage assessment from Ian, and the applicant can provide insurance or FEMA documentation, and they will also be required to sign an affidavit.
So moved.
Motion second. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion on the motion? Commissioner Herr?
So is this something that we've done in the past?
I believe we did following Hurricane Irma. Rebecca's nodding her head, so I don't know off the top of my head which storm it was, but I do know we've done it in the past.
We also did it in Fay. We also did it, and I don't know if it was Charlie, Jean, or Francis, but it was one of those 3.
Charlie, Jean, Francis.
And
One of those
so,
3.
Just continued questions for education purposes. Are the losses recoverable from, and really they're not losses because it's increased revenue that we would have never had. I appreciate that. It's also, the workload doesn't go away. But is it recoverable through FEMA?
I don't want to speculate. I'd be surprised.
I see you nodding back
I
saying no. So it's not recoverable through, don't anybody panic that I'm voting no. Just everybody relax. I just want to get it on the record that this is Seminole County leaning in on behalf of the citizens, and it's really our staff leaning in because the workload doesn't go away, we don't hire additional people to do it, and there's no revenue to support it.
That is correct.
Yep.
Commissioner Lockhart?
Well, following up on that, that was one of my concerns is, are we going to be subsidizing from the general fund for the tipping fees, or the building fees? How are we going to replace that revenue?
I guess Rebecca?
And so the answer that I got was, we're not.
We're not.
Right.
So,
There's no source.
and so to your point, it's really important that we do recognize what this is and what it isn't. And I believe it's a negligible amount of money that we're proposing.
Correct, and at this point, we haven't been inundated with permit requests related to storm damage, but we are anticipating that we will get permits once all the water is receded and people are able to finally get into their homes and really be able to repair. This would impact the building fund, which is the 104 fund. It's an enterprise fund, so it would not come out of the general fund. With regards to FEMA is going to send us staff to help us with if we have significant damage from Hurricane Ian. They will send us staff to actually work here to help us with permitting.
Good to know. Thank you.
Commissioner Zimmer, you want to say?
That's all I was going to point out.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passed unanimously. Ms. Johnson?
Thank you. The only other item I have is last month, our Administrator of Economic Development and Tourism, Guy Cunha, was named to the statewide Destinations Florida Board of Directors, and then he was also named the board chair for the Hospitality Academies of Central Florida, which includes all Seminole, Orange, and Osceola County Public Schools hospitality programs. So congratulations,
Fantastic.
Guy.
Congratulations.
Good stuff.
Awesome, yes.
Thank you. Now go on to the county attorney, Mr. Chipak.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to introduce Senior Assistant County Attorney Desmond Morrell, who will give you a brief update on the opioid litigation.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners. Desmond Morrell, Senior Assistant County Attorney. I understand that I'm standing between you all and lunch, so I'll try to be as brief as possible. A couple of quick updates in regards to the opioid litigation. So I'm sure you all have seen the recent victory, so to speak, in regards to Walmart. They have pledged $3.1 billion towards the National Opioid Fund, in which Florida will see $215 million of that. And approximately, or at this point, we are up to just shy of $322,000 that stands to come to Seminole County for the first year. Now, as you all know from my previous discussions, this is going to be an ongoing payment system for about 18 years. But our new total for the first year is about double what we expected, so I think that's a great thing. The second update, we should be receiving these funds within the next 1 to 2 weeks, and I know we've been hearing that for a little while, but as you know, this kind of trickles down from the national level, then to the state, and then to us. I am optimistic that we will see it soon. The Attorney General's office has been in great communication with us to confirm that they have our wiring instructions and all of that good stuff. So I'll make sure that I'm in good contact with our comptroller and the clerk's office, just so we know when that wire transfer does occur. Outside of that, there are a few initiatives, one of which I know our Commissioner Constantine is pursuing. There is an external group that is headed by the National Association of County Organizers, NACO, and I know that there are a few staff members here locally, as well as our Commissioner, that will be applying for that position. We're hopeful that either the Commissioner or the staff member can get on that board, again, just so we're as knowledgeable as possible about what we can do with these funds and these resources, and again, maximize what we see here within the county. My ultimate ask for you all today is that you all approve and authorize this latest Walmart settlement, again, which stands to bring $215 million to the state of Florida, and again, will trickle down to Seminole County, totaling just under $322,000 for this year. Not sure who the chairman will be by the end of the meeting, but I will make sure that I walk this paperwork over to you all to sign so that we can get it back to the state, again, so that we can try to get this money a little bit quicker. I'm open for any questions if you all have any. I'm happy to present any additional information that you may require.
Move approval of the request.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have Mr. Constantine?
Thank you very much. Just a couple of things, Desmond. Did that also include CVX too?
CVS.
Yes, so, yes.
Yes,
this-
CVX.
CVS. So yes, this initial trough of money will include Janssen, Teva, Allergan, CVS, Walgreens, and a few other distributors. One of the participants that we initially agreed to pursue was Endo Pharmaceuticals. Endo Pharmaceuticals has recently filed for bankruptcy, so this means that all of their assets are frozen. We do anticipate still receiving this money. It's just not going to be immediately. They have to work all that out.
And this other thing, I do believe that when we make this motion, or the motion's been made, when we approve it, it's the chairman that, at the time. that signs
Correct.
everything.
There we go. Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Mr. Chipak, anything else?
Not at this time.
Okay. Move on to District Commissioner Report, District Number 2.
Thank you very much. You know, as many of us in our districts are still dealing with the unfortunate events of the 2 hurricanes. In my district, this last one, Nicole, actually appeared to cause more wind damage than it did flooding. However, that said, we're now starting to see Lake Harney rise again as things are flowing, of course, north. So we continue to monitor those, and I thank Alan Harris as well as Jimmy Beach and all the folks that have been trying to do something and everything they can in their powers to mitigate what Mother Nature has brought upon us. Quick update on the airport. Airport pretty much is moving forward. We still are not back to the 2019 numbers. Anticipation is by second quarter of next year, we believe we should be in that position. That's the goal and what things appear to look like. The Asian Lantern Festival, of course, is starting November 17th. For those interested, tickets are on sale if they're still available. They've been selling out and typically have sold out pretty quickly. Great fundraiser, great opportunity to get the family and children out to enjoy a festival there at the zoo. The other part of the zoo is that many of you are aware, the flooding at the zoo was reopened. Things appear to slowly beginning back to normal. Revenue should, of course, resume, and about a month worth of revenue has been impacted. So with what we did today will be very helpful for those animals moving forward. Also attended CFHLA luncheon. Commissioner Constantine was honored as the Public Servant of the Year, celebrating 44 years on work on behalf of the citizens of this county and the state. So congratulations again, Mr. Constantine. Well deserved. And with that said, everything else is perfect in District 2.
Perfect. Thank you. District 4?
Because of the storm, so many things that were scheduled for this last week have been postponed to this week and next week. So a lot probably to report after the Thanksgiving holiday and in our next meeting in December. Tomorrow I'll be spending the better part of the day at the East Central Florida Regional Planning Council. I know there's a committee meeting I think that Commissioner Constantine and I will be attending together after the general meeting pertaining to sustainability. And anyway, I just want to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving. Hope everyone gets to spend some real quality time with family and friends and reflect on all the things that we really do have to be grateful for in this country. So.
Thank you. District 3?
Thank you. Commissioner Zimbauer and Commissioner Lockhart gave a great presentation of my report. So, but I think that we all know that a lot of things were postponed. A couple of things did go on, and I just wanted to congratulate our chairman, who happened to be in a booth at the Annunciation Catholic Church Fall Festival that I attended, and I can't remember which booth it is, but I think
it was a Dunkin' booth.
I think it was the pre-sangria booth. I don't know.
Would you like me to tell you instead of guess? It was Father Ivan's family sangria.
There we go.
Sangria in there somewhere.
So yes, it was an adult beverage.
I saw Father Ivan walking around, and he was going back to the booth every time to make more of it. So it seemed to be very successful. But also, there's a TDC meeting this Thursday, as you all saw that. We gave away like $375,000 today to both the zoo as well as Sanford, which is wonderful. And the Lifeboat Project is going to have their annual gala this week, and let me see, and the Wekiva River Basin Commission will have its meeting next Monday. The Florida Association of Counties Legislative Conference in St. Petersburg will be the 30th through December 2nd, and the CFX's meeting was canceled this past week, as I think the MPO's was also.
Correct.
And that will be meeting again on the 8th. The only thing of significance in that one, because there's a great deal of contracts let, but the real thing that Laura Kelly was disappointed in is that the annual chili contest was having to be postponed. So that'll be happening, I believe, in January. And outside of that, again, I want to just wish you all out there here a very happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
We have a lot of blessings to be thankful for with all of the things that have happened to us. We're still here and we're still kicking.
Yes, sir. District 5?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to start by congratulating the commissioner to my right and the commissioner to my left. It's a pleasure to serve with you, and I'm glad we get to continue to do that.
Yep.
would like to give a shout out to our tax collector, J.R. Kroll, who returned to the county almost $4 million. It's nice to be back in that situation.
Yes, it is.
So we continue to be supported by him and continue to support his good work. A big shout out to the EOC, and, you know, when you sit home and you hear a second hurricane is coming and you realize how devastating that is to you, and all you're doing is sitting home while the hurricane is happening, and then you think about the people that are tied up in some horrible government building in a room with each other again, you just can't fathom that the amount of work that they did with such cheerful attitudes, and literally stepping up for every single citizen that comes through the pipeline that is in need of something out of the norm. So a huge thank you to them. I also owe an ongoing debt of gratitude to the FDOT, John Tyler and Mary Brooks, Secretary Tyler and Mary Brooks on his team. We did host a community meeting with regard to the surface road on 46 that has trucks going into the neighborhood as opposed to taking the hard left and then the hard right to go to Lake County. And they presented, on the lead up to the community meeting, multiple options to me. They continued to revise them. They presented the best one that evening. It all happened in a very compressed period of time. The citizens gave input as to what they would like to see happen to that plan. They did their best to adopt that input, and the reconstruction has already started. So they've knocked down the it's called a bulb out. I know more about this than I ever wanted to know, let me tell you. And it has slowed down some of the traffic into that neighborhood at this point, but we're hoping for a good outcome with that. I would remind you that the Rescue Outreach Mission Luncheon was moved. It's tomorrow, and we're hoping for a wonderful event and good, committed fundraising efforts from there. And then I would wish you all a happy Thanksgiving, but I will own the fact that the turkey will once again sit on the right-hand corner of my dinner table, and the lasagna will take precedence.
Perfect.
Just going to say.
Right on.
Thank you, Commissioner. Under my report, we first want to congratulate Commissioner Zimbow, Commissioner Lockhart for the re-election. Well done. I'd like to thank staff for their continued hard work for Hurricane Ian and the recent hard work for Tropical Storm Nicole. As was stated earlier, your dedication to this county on so many different levels goes unmatched. And it's not just the people sitting in the EOC, it's many of the people out on the roads, and many of the people filling in and backfilling other positions. So it doesn't go unnoticed. We do notice it, and the citizens notice it as well. I'd also be remiss if I did not congratulate Ms. Tricia Johnson for her birthday that took place this past Sunday. Happy birthday. I made it. One more time around the sun. So congratulations. I did put a sheet of paper on everyone's place about an executive order regarding tipping fees. We're seeking BCC approval for ratifying executive order number 2022-021, in the order to include waiving tipping fees for construction and demolition debris through Sunday, November 20th, closed of business. Fees will be reinstated on Monday, November 21st. This order does not include vegetation debris, only construction and demolition debris, primarily for those homes that are flooded in need of disposal of construction debris. Free vegetation debris drop-off at sites located at the Seminole County Sports Complex open to the public, and waiving of the tipping fee is not eligible for FEMA reimbursement. We need a motion to...
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, say by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign?
I sincerely appreciate this, as I'm sure some of the others who've had a lot of residents impacted by this. The only thing I would ask, and I think we're already underway of making sure our landfill folks are educated on this topic, because there's been some confusion that some of my residents have shown up and been turned away saying it's not free under the current order. Others have paid, others haven't paid, and I think that's being handled, but that's been a point of contention from people in my district, as things are drying out, they're starting to demolish their homes and so forth. And the problem comes in, it's maybe unique in my area to a certain extent, that a lot of these homes, they're gutting the drywall at the same time loading the oak tree parts on their trailer with the drywall and all that. Because they got to move the oak tree in order to get the stuff into a trailer or a truck and get it trucked to the thing. So I don't know how we're going to deal with that, but hopefully we continue to have that conversation, and maybe some signage at the landfill that indicates what's really happening.
And our Environmental Services Director, Kim, is here, so we'll chat following this meeting about how we can get creative.
Well, now that this motion has been approved, I'm sure staff will be working very diligently to make sure that it's upheld, and I see there's no issues. Staff understands what our wants and needs and the citizens' needs are, so it's in good hands.
And so that it's, to make sure, just for the public record, to be clear, some of this is driven by FEMA reimbursements. There's certain things we can be reimbursed for, certain things we cannot, and if we're waiving certain things, they're not reimbursable.
Correct.
That's some of the struggle in helping folks understand, but having the boom bah as a drop-off area is going to be a game changer for a lot of people.
And lastly, I want to wish everyone a wonderful holiday for Thanksgiving for you and your families. This is definitely the time of year where it's good to reflect and spend time with your family and your loved ones. And I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and as we enter into the holiday season. That's the end of my report. We have no future agenda items requested. Public comments on items, non-agenda items. Shane, do you have any written requests? Anyone in the audience would like to address the board? Going to close public comments. Public comments is now closed. We're going to stand into recess to 1:30. When we come back, we'll do the swearing in at 1:30 and do the board reorg and then the affirmation of the standard of conduct for the Board of County Commissioners. We're in recess. Thank you.
Thank you.